So what kind of things have to change in a brand when you go from a 6-figure to 7 or to 8 figures? You know, what does that evolution actually look like? And what kind of things do business owners need to consider when they're making that shift?
I think we would start with the core values of the brand itself. You know, every person has their values and every company has their values, and there is a difference because it is corporate or collegiate or collective. And so you have to look at the areas in which you agree and in which you are aligned for the purpose of the brand.
Then how should that brand speak? Because, you know, when I think about writing for the company, like if I'm responding to comments and stuff and things on social media, I'm coming from the company and responding for them. You know, I often just say, hey, we look forward to that. This is awesome. We appreciate that, those type of things. Should I rethink how I'm speaking as the brand? All right, so this is going to be a freaking killer episode. Man, Hersh had me on his podcast. We laughed our asses off, had a really good time, talked a lot about sales, branding, and the like. So I knew I had to bring him back for this one. But y'all strap it in because this dude's not only funny, he's pretty damn smart when it comes to branding and the likes. So Hersh, welcome to the show. My biggest question for you right now is how the hell does a company actually find their brand voice?
That's a great question, Donnie. Thank you. Good to be with you. Good to be with you, Kevin. Yeah, we have a good time. So the first thing I will say is that branding is always personal. So this dichotomy that supposedly exists between corporate brand and personal brand, I don't buy into that. I do think that you can have
you got to tell
personal...
me. You got to tell me more about that because I am all about the personal brand.
Yes,
and it's separate than say our company Success Champions.
Well, we talked about this a little bit. The brands may be separate. In other words, you may have the Donnie Boyven brand, you know, and the Champions brand, but that doesn't mean that one is personal, quote unquote, and the other one is somehow impersonal, you know? So when I talk about a brand voice, it really is the attitude of the brand and the powers behind it. There's somebody behind it. You know, a brand can't say, well, there's nobody that runs it. It's just kind of a automated, you know, autonomous entity that does what it wants. You know, that's not the way any of these things work. And collectively, they have to have a point of view. So a brand voice is a point of view. An example would be, you know, my brand is to be irreverent and funny and make sense of the world with a sense of absurdity, but not really attacking anybody or alienating anybody. I want to bring everybody into the conversation, you know, and that's kind of my brand. And the more you cultivate it and the better you get at speaking for that brand, the more clear the voice becomes. And I think...
Let me think through that a second. So if the brand is a personal brand, I got that, wrap my head around that.
Right.
Then how should that brand speak? Because, you know, when I think about writing for the company, like if I'm responding to comments and stuff and things on social media that are, I'm coming from the company and responding for them. You know, I often just say, hey, we look forward to that. This is awesome. We appreciate that, those type of things. Should I rethink how I'm speaking as the brand?
Well, I don't know that you have to rethink. What you pointed out without necessarily even being conscious of it is that in the brand voice, you speak in the collective. voice. So you're
Right.
saying we like to do this, we do that, we believe in that. Already you're conveying that it's not just Donnie and Donnie's writing you an email and saying, hey, here's my thoughts on this particular topic. So that's one distinction, is that, we're speaking collectively as a brand. We're talking about what we as a group or as a movement try to accomplish. And if it's coming from that voice, and I try to be really clear with clients about this, before we even embark on a campaign, we have to know who's telling the story. I did a campaign recently where it's in the collective brand voice, and you imagine that this is a team of highly creative, it's a creative app and kind of a workshop-y type of done with you service. And it had a very kind of collegiate feel. So the voice was, okay, we're not going to waste a bunch of your time. We're going to do this thing because this guy who created this thing is a friggin' genius. He's amazing. And then another email was written in his voice where he was like, look, you already have heard everything that the teams told you. They're very excited. They're getting nuts over this thing. I just want to give you one more chance to book a meeting with me because it is honestly getting a little busy. And, and while I told them not to, cut the thing off exactly at midnight, let's give everybody a little more time. They're chomping at the bit. So please book the meeting. It would be really great. And those two people are very, the creator voice was very low key, and it balanced out the brand voice, which was more boisterous and fun and, and a little and irreverent. And I felt like just for that campaign, that felt really balanced. But go ahead, Kevin.
As I say, I think that's a big thing with most company brands versus personal brands, is that not only is the voice different, but the tone is different. So, how Donnie or I talk is completely different from each other, but it's also completely different from the brand itself. So, it's not just that voice piece, it's the type of words that we use. Even with Donnie, part of how we can tell that it's Donnie talking is there's usually misspellings or grammar issues. So, that's real. We literally, when we do emails for him, we would make sure that we included like a misspelled word or left out commas, because Donnie doesn't like commas. We would have people who would just freak out because they were marketing like, oh my God, you have typos. I'm like, no, those were on purpose because we wanted them to think it was Donnie, not just a marketing thing. Yeah, they're type ins. Exactly.
They're type ins. They're not typos. Yeah.
So, for a brand to kind of continue this topic, for a brand that has two different, both me and Donnie have completely different voices and tones, how do you manage that when we're both trying to build the corporate brand at the same time?
I think we would start with the core values of the brand itself. Every person has their values and every company has their values, and there is a difference because it is corporate or collegiate or collective. And so you have to look at the areas in which you agree and in which you are aligned for the purpose of the brand, so that it's all about, well, what does the brand represent? Personally, if you weren't my partner, I might do it this way. Oh, well, if we weren't partners, this wouldn't be this way. This would never have happened. So it's like making a baby, without the mess, but it's like making a baby. You're kind of creating this. Like sometimes I'll see a person on the street and they'll remind me of two different celebrities, and I'll say, oh, if so and so and so and so had a kid, that's what they would look like. And that's kind of what your brand looks like. It's your baby that you create together. And so the voice and the attitude and the offerings and the tone are all going to be unique. It's a third entity.
I love that, because I think branding is one of the biggest things that people don't wrap their head around.
Sure.
You know, a good buddy of mine, I think I even said this on your show, said that, marketing and advertising is what you say you do. Branding is what everybody else says you do when you're not in the room.
Yeah.
So I've always looked at personal branding is your personal brand is the stories they're saying about you when you're not around. And, looking at it from that perspective, I don't think people struggle with the idea that branding is more than a logo and that kind of stuff. They just don't understand the idea of a brand in general. Because the way most of us learn about branding is, we're like, okay, Coca-Cola is a brand, McDonald's is a brand, right? Nike's a brand. There's a feeling, there's emotion, there's a tone to it and everything else. I don't think people are good at going, okay, I've built a company. Now I need to look at this company and make it more than just a name, more than just an image. There's got to be a voice to it and everything that goes along with that. How does somebody take something that they've bootstrapped from the get-go and put their blood, sweat, and tears into and go, okay, this is now my brand? Add on to that question, because I know some of it is already going to be established, but how do you put that out there in a way that the market understands what you're trying to say and do?
As opposed to blurring it with your own brand, or as with your personal brand, or just conveying what it is that
I think a lot of people struggle with the idea of being able to tell people what they are, who they are, what they do. And I think that's why you hear so many people come out and you can literally hear them tell you what their business is and have no idea what the hell just came out of their mouth, because they haven't wrapped their head around it completely. Or even worse, they know exactly what it is, but because they have gotten that shock reaction from somebody when they've said what they do, maybe they're a wealth management company or an insurance company, and as soon as they said it, somebody's flinched and go, oh, crap, here comes another insurance person, or crap, here comes another financial advisor type thing. How does somebody position that and build a brand that extends beyond that, maybe that corporation or their own company, but that people want to lean into? I know it's a long question, but I'm trying to get the words out.
But you're right, Donnie, because we've all experienced it. We live in a world where we're trying to stand out and we're trying to separate ourselves from the pack. And so there's a tendency to say, okay, well, I'm not going to call myself a copywriter. Let's say in my case, I'm going to call myself a copy wizard or a copy or a message guru.
Yeah, it's like all the salespeople that have I'm a business development rep, or I'm a I don't know, freaking
or
client
something
relationship.
themed. It could be something themed to the. Let's say the company was called Yellow Blossom tax returns, and then you say, oh well, I'm a Daisy tax preparer. Oh, he's a peonies. It's like you get caught up in what you think is creativity, and it just breeds confusion. And I think that the answer lies somewhere in the problem solving. Everything solves a problem. Even luxury items solve a problem. I need a Porsche. It solves a problem.
Wait.
My problem is I don't have a Porsche.
How does a Porsche solve a problem?
That's right. And but I think that if we get to that problem, but if you think of like, okay, so copywriter, yeah, clearly it solves a problem. There's something that needs to be written. I'm writing it. That's fine. There isn't really a lot of complexity there, but I have had that situation where I've been like trying to explain the kind of USP, the uniqueness of what I do in the first 3 seconds. And I think that doesn't work. I think what we have to do is go to the most basic thing. Assume nothing. Assume that the person you're talking to has only the most basic knowledge of your industry, whatever industry you're in. And so if they have the most basic knowledge and you say, they don't know anything about advertising. They don't know anything about my business or my background. And I say I'm a copywriter, then that starts with a pretty simple, basic thing. And then you can have a conversation. What is the most basic thing that you would say about your organization?
So here's a real example of one I had today. I was talking to a gal during a Zoom call, just getting to know you type call. And she said, I'm an executive operations associate, something like that.
Okay.
And I looked right at her and said, what the hell does that even mean? Because she goes, well, I don't like the word fractional, but I'm really a fractional COO, fractional CFO, and even a little bit in the marketing game, because when I get into these companies that are $2 to $20 million, I come in traditionally through an operational window, but I then end up being in their numbers. I end up being in their marketing, and it just goes a long way. So saying I'm a fractional COO doesn't cover what I do.
Right.
So how is a person like that covers so many different assets when they go into a company, would they be better off just saying I'm a consultant? I mean,
they might. Okay. So here's the other side of things. And you would have to explain it to me again, because I still don't know what she does, but
See,
I think
there's the problem.
But I think if I did, there's a time where like the creativity can help by way of like analogy. So in other words, I know someone who is essentially a drop-in CEO. I don't know if you know her.
Oh, I saw her in one of your videos. I saw that her in one of your videos.
She's amazing.
That's where I first heard you say that you're a freaking brand therapist. I really enjoyed that.
Right. A message therapist. But again, if I put on my card message therapist, people will think it says massage or they won't understand what it means.
Which I first thought I saw when I read it.
Yeah, which is fine, but it's descriptive when you already have some context. It helps.
Yes.
Because there is something to it, and we could talk more about what that means and why that's a little different from some other things. But with Deb, what I said to her is, she explained what you do. Well, I go in, I have this expertise in operations, and I know a lot of the different areas that they go. So I go in. So it's not just the kind of a CEO thing, but I go in and I can straighten this out and straighten that out. But I don't stay. They don't need to be worried that I'm gonna, go in and take their job, because I'm not brought in to replace them. I'm brought in to fix what's going wrong there and then go on my way. And I said, oh, so you're like corporate Mary Poppins, and she said, oh God, yeah. I go and if you think a little deeper, that story is a really beautiful story.
It is
about a family, which is what hopefully like a functional company or C-suite would be like. It's like a family that's going through some tough times and needs a little guidance overall and needs a little fixing and a little sense of order. And, then you're on your way. And it's like and she loved that. And what I liked about it is you could explain to anybody, I'm kind of like the Mary Poppins of this and then. People know about, she comes in, she fixes some stuff and she leaves. And it's like that sometimes helps, because if there is, some people are very niched down and it's pretty in the weeds what they do. What was this? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you're good. I just had a train of thought. I want to try something. So we ran into a unique branding issue with the company. So when we launched our collective groups that we had, we called it Success Champion Networking. And what we found is the word networking itself drums up such a negative connotation, right?
Right.
People have had bad experiences with it. We learned in the Philippines, networking actually means multi-level marketing, and things like that. So, we decided to go ahead and we're going to drop the name networking off of our groups and took it to just Success Champions. In doing that, we still had to describe what we were doing, and we don't really have networking groups. They do so much more than networking. So we said we have peer groups that are focused on business growth and bringing small business owners together to collectively help them grow their business. There happens to be some networking that comes along with it. So did we brand that in the right direction? Did we reframe it enough that people will be able to wrap their head around it? It's been received really well so far, but I just, from your perspective, was that the right way to move through that process?
Well, so you changed it to Success Champions.
Correct.
As the name. So you took off networking.
Yep.
And networking, I agree, is a hazardous term. It also might be better to call something a network rather than a verb, because the network is the result of the work that the people are doing to get to know each other. The networking thing is more like the schmoozing thing, which sounds like, you say, it's kind of got this vibe. But then a network is also, do people know, are they thinking of a network or are they thinking of a TV network?
Right.
Is it a broadcast
or a computer network, right?
A computer network. So if you said Success Champions Network, they would think, oh, it's a television program, or it's some kind of, or they might get it right, but there's certainly room to get it wrong. So I think Success Champions is great. And then what did you do? Did you create a tagline?
So we've got our members and clients to start using the phrase, I am a success champion. So,
right, okay.
And then we had them define, which I have on the back of my shirt right now, but define what it means to be a success champion. And a success champion is somebody that's going to champion their own success and then come back and champion somebody else's success. Right? It's more than pay it forward. It's teach others how to get success by opening doors and the likes for them. So we are going after the idea that you can be the champion of your own success. I am a success champion.
Right. Okay. Well, and then the question is, what do you provide? What are you providing? What problem are you solving? As an organization?
For sure. So a lot of small business owners, they did the corporate leap. They get a couple years into business, and now they're actually trying to grow their business. But they've made themselves somewhat of an island because it's gotten so hard to build a business. They don't want people to know how bad it is. They don't likely know how to drum up their own business because they never learned sales along the way. So we created an environment where they could be around other business owners that could help them. They could bring their knowledge to the table. Collectively, they could grow each other's businesses through knowledge, training, education, opening doors and making introductions for each other. At the end of the day, this almost becomes your board of directors for your business.
Right. And everybody's part of the board of directors, right?
Correct.
Like, in other words, I join, so I become the board of directors for your business, and you become the board of directors for mine, and it's a very reciprocal engagement.
Yes, very much so.
And I think that's what I think people miss, because to you, champions, and I got this when we first spoke, but to you, champion is, I champion your cause. I'm a champion. And then the champion of winning is a byproduct of our support, of our mutual support. But sometimes people hear champion and they think, oh, it just means I won. I just won. I'm a champion.
Yep.
I just won. So we would need to come up with something that align, because I'm a success champion doesn't quite tell it, doesn't quite tell that, because we don't know what it means, right? Does it mean I champion other people? Does it mean that I'm a victor? Does it mean, that?
But is that a bad thing though? Because if members, and it's not necessarily the tagline that we would want on like our website as the main grabber, but for a member to be able to post, I am a success champion with, whatever fun graphic that they can put on their profile or whatever. Is it enough for people to say, I don't know what that is, tell me more? And to get people into a conversation? where they can now say, well, here's what success champion means to me.
Yeah. I think it needs a line that
this isn't going to be the line, I don't think.
Yeah.
But thinking just out loud fast is one of the things that I've been saying a lot is give, take, give.
Take. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, right.
You know, that only tells a portion of it. And we should be fully working through our brand on the thing, but it's fun to watch your brain work and how you're thinking through this.
Yeah. And to your point, Donnie, there's nothing, like we can't be afraid to throw out ideas that may be terrible also. Not that using give, take, give is bad. I mean, I love it because it's memorable, and it's not that it's catchy. It's that it really is clear. It's like, yes, you have to get out of the mindset that you're going to go in and take something or be given something. Go in and show your value and, make these or build these useful relationships. But somewhere in there is that notion of, the best way, and again, this isn't it either, but the best way to have an amazing board of directors is to be an amazing board of directors. Right. Be the best way to win is to champion someone else. That's part of that. So that's getting a little closer.
And then there's a portion of it of, people should only want to be in rooms of people that are going for it, that are trying to level up, right?
Right.
You don't want to be in a room where you're the biggest fish or the smallest fish. You want to be in the room where sometimes you're leading the race, sometimes you're in second, third, next time you're back in the lead, but you're all fighting and moving forward and growing together, right? So there's that portion in there as well, that you're not pulling people up. Y'all are running side by side, getting after it, and the business personal growth for each individual impacts the business growth of every individual.
Right. Yeah. So, but that's the stuff I would play with. The I'm a success champion. I like once that's embedded in people's minds what it is, then as a campaign, it feels like I'm a success champion would be a great campaign.
That's the Nike just do it.
Other line would still be there. What?
Right. That's the Nike just do it type thing.
Or the milk board got milk.
Yeah.
The got milk. Yeah.
So then how does a company tell that brand story then? So, and we don't have to use our company, but you know, if a brand's got to tell the story so a campaign would work, how do they tell that then brand story?
Yeah. Okay. So what you're pointing out, Donnie, is that, like I said, it's I'm a success champion is a campaign when you already have, like for example, I see that as a case study campaign, right? I'm a success champion, and why? So, but that one line, and sometimes I come up with those lines like right on the spot, but that's, it's kind of a magic trick. That's not the point. The point isn't a timed thing. Okay, go. And I'll give you, we're not playing password or whatever. So I would come up with that, with that sentence, with that line, because, that line will tell the story. I came up with one. I have a new podcast that I'm starting.
So this is podcast number 3, right?
This is podcast number 3. Well, fortunately I've done well doing it. Like I have a knack for it.
What's the name of your comedy one? Kevin would freaking love this podcast.
Yeah, well, Yes Brand is the comedy one. And what I'm doing with Yes Brand is I'm going to make that more about this Yes Brand method that I've developed, because I have experts all the time wanting to come on the show, and I'm like, well, if the show's only for the businesses, then the audience, which are business people, are missing out on the expertise of other of other experts than me. And that's not what I wanted. So I'm like, okay, the Yes Brand method of communicating, which involves humor, humanity, core values and storytelling, all that stuff, is about the technique. And I'm going to stay with that. And then I have another one, which is niche down really to, it's called Brand Voice Runway, right? Now, Brand Voice Runway just sounds like, okay, finding your brand voice. I like it and it's catchy and it's accurate, but it doesn't really explain what it's about. So I came up with the phrase 7-figure stories, 8-figure ambition. So what I hope comes through there is that the business has already figured out how to get to 7 figures. They're somewhere in the 7-figure range. They want to get their 8-figure company going. They want it to be and so what I call it is the next figure brand voice, right? If you have a 6-figure company and you're talking to your people out there, your list, how do you grow that? How do you activate people? You've been selling a product for $29.95 and now you have a $5,000 mastermind. How do you convert the audience to think of you a certain way? And so I think what is bound to happen is everybody has to figure out their next figure brand voice. Because if they've already made it to a certain point in business and they are struggling to get to the next place, which a lot of us are, then we have to change the way we see ourselves, the way we talk. We have to figure out, well, how do we talk as an 8-figure brand, let's say? Or if we're 6, then how do we talk as a 7-figure brand? So the next figure voice assumes that the client or the listener or the guest is on a trajectory. They just aren't sure how to change the way that they're perceived.
So take it or leave it. I think the next figure brand voice is a better name for that podcast. Right. I think that tells the story a hell of a lot better. Just from an outside perspective, because now I get what you're trying to talk to, because in my head, I'm sitting there going, shit, what is our next, figure freaking brand voice? What does that sound like? What do we have to change? Because the second thing that also runs through my head when I'm thinking through that is, okay, how do we maintain what we've built in these people and the way we've talked to them and nurtured them along the lines? But then how do we scale, beyond that so we can reach further, wider? I mean, it opens up a shit ton of questions in my head for me. Yeah. It would make me want to lean in and listen a hell of a lot more. So let's tackle that a little bit. So how does someone shift from a 6-figure mindset to a 7-figure, or 7-figure to 8-figure, 8-figure to 9? That's a big mental shift. It's one I hadn't thought about either.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't think about it until they get there. Because what happens is, you have your eye, most likely, all of us should even, on the next step, right? Because you can't get to the horizon without walking on the beach and figuring out how to cross the sand. You can't even get to the water. So it's like, how do we get to the next step? And what I encourage people to do, and it's not like I certainly am not making this up, inventing this, is to look at those people that you want to be like. Find out from those people, like some of the guests that come on my show will be 7-figure businesses, and maybe they're a mid 7-figure, or maybe they're high 7-figure, and they're trying, if they're $2 million business, they're going to learn a hell of a lot from the person who's a $5 million business, because between those two is a line, that they are going to have to cross. It's not just, if we did that much better, we'll be 5 million. It doesn't work like that. If they're 5 million and they want to be 10, that's a big line. 7 to 10 is a big line. I'm going to have on as I hope it'll be the first guest, but I don't know for sure, the CEO of Birkenstock, because they're a 10-figure brand, and I want the guests and the people to learn from people who are way beyond where that's a 245-year-old plus, brand. And so when you think about, how do you get there, you do have to talk to people about how they got there. And that's kind of largely what the show will be about. How did you get here? Because there are people listening who haven't gotten there.
I'm telling you right now, I would listen to that podcast.
That's
something
I
would freaking listen into, and not just because we're buddies and I know you, but the entire thought process around there is making me run through my head of, okay, who are those people even now that I should be reaching out to and having those conversations with?
So what kind of things have to change in a brand when you go from a 6-figure to 7 or to 8 figures? What does that evolution actually look like, and what kind of things do business owners need to consider when they're making that shift?
I think, Kevin, that a lot of what changes is the scope of the scope of the company doesn't just change, but the scope of your perception. You're the founder. And if you're at 6 figures in revenue, it's largely about you and maybe a few other people, and this very tight collective of people striving to accomplish something. When you cross over into 7 figures, now it's becoming a little bit less about you, but it's still you driving the train, right? You're still driving that boat. And you've got to make the people who work with you do better, inspired. So I think what starts to happen as you approach 8 is that you're now inspiring more than you are grinding. It's still hard. It's still tough. But if you're going to be an 8-figure brand, you've got to start thinking like, that's where it's about changing the world. I don't think a 7-figure brand can be looking at changing the world yet. They got to be changing their own backyard. You got to change your backyard. You have a movement. You can have a movement. It doesn't have to be a huge movement, but it has to be a little more granular. Maybe you get bigger and bigger, then it's like, there are purpose-driven brands that have no purpose other than altruism. They want to function completely to help people. And you notice sometimes they grow super fast.
Yeah.
because everyone knows, it's really not, I'm getting on board something really safe here. And so safety and security in the brand image is another big, huge thing that just becomes harder and harder the bigger you get. And so that voice, becomes maybe even a little more reverent. Maybe there's a responsibility that you can take on, that you're not a scrapper anymore. You're not a bootstrapper, and you're not a scrapper, and you're not but you're not an impersonal entity either. You're not so big that you don't listen or pay attention anymore. Like, let's say you get to it, you're a 7-figure voice, and I use in the communications this collective voice that we create for your brand. And then there are intermittent, communications from the founder or the founders. Then you have that other voice too, which is sometimes you have something from the founders, right? Which could be 2 people or 3 people, and then you have the individual, and then you have the company. So you would have theoretically 3 voices coming through there, but that's okay. I mean, I spent a lot of time when I was traveling constantly reading all the in-flight magazines, and I always was interested in reading the from the CEO thing. because I wanted to hear, is this like a beating heart in here? Is this a real person who's telling me something really? Is there something really personal coming through, or is it just bullshit like the same?
A lot of it's a lot of bullshit. Most of them that I read.
A lot of it's a lot of bullshit. Every now and then you read something from a CEO, and they can be in any category, but I use that as an example. And and you would read something that's truly personal. And I think we know, we have a barometer that it's a bullshit detector, and I think this will apply to AI too, because AI can be really competent, but it can also be just a lot of bullshit that it strings together from the internet. Just happens to do it faster than we do.
Well, I think you'll get a kick out of this since you do all this copywriting. Is, we're working on some of the stuff for our Badass Business Summit, and I literally went to ChatGPT and said, "Here is our persona. Put together a schedule that would speak directly to this person."
Got it. Yeah.
And I thought I had the entire summit nailed down, right, and everything figured out, and we were dialed in. Then when I sat with the team and said, "Here's what we're going to do," I realized that what ChatGPT had actually created was shit, because they didn't actually know our audience.
Right.
They were going off with just information I can feed it, and only go off the information I get it. So I just sit back and rethink the entire process. And when I sat and did it on my own, within the structure that ChatGPT created, now we have something that I'm like, oh, fucking hell, why didn't I just start there? And I think a lot of people are trying to shortcut the process. And I've quit using ChatGPT for social posts and stuff, because when I write my own stories in my own language, my own words, they pop. Every time I do something from ChatGPT, my brand voice is gone.
My experience too. And the thing is, I'm using it a lot for fun and a lot for learning how it works and all of that stuff. But to use it for work, I learned two things recently. If you're doing it for work, it would only slow me down at this point, because I'm used to looking at a blank page and I work faster. I respond. I'm a responder. I'm a reactor. So I get input, I react to it. I'm not. ChatGPT is a reactor, quote unquote, too. So it's like, doesn't make any sense for me to add another reactor. That's a great way
of looking at it.
Yeah, it's a reactor. It's not an originator, right? But I am an originator once I react to the client. So I have to keep that intact. The other thing I noticed is that I think ChatGPT will be best utilized by professional writers, because writers know how many ideas and what goes into the content. So, for example, when I meet with clients and I talk about their brand and I talk about their history and their goals and their dreams and all that, I process that into a voice. But after I do that, and once I'm settled on that, once we really know what we're doing, then I could go to ChatGPT and say, "Here's who we are. Here's what I need. What is your idea? What do you want to generate?" And then it gives you something back. But you're so solid in who you are and what you know about yourself and what you want, that that you can control and navigate and become better at as it grows and develops. I think as writers who are right on top of it and right there with it right now, as that matures, we get to be better at using it. It will get better the better we get at using it, and I think that's where the win will be. It's not Alexa. It's not like, "Alexa, play Billy Joel." It's like,
I tell you, along those lines, a fascinating thing that I did, I sat down with a consultant that we brought into the company, and he grilled me for about an hour on who is our ideal client, like who's the best for success champions. And I happen to have my Fathom recording, which is a free Zoom recording thing you can have in there,
Right.
record the entire process. Well, Fathom also does a transcription. I took that transcription of that conversation over the Chat GPT and said, can you summarize this conversation? And it did. And after that summary, I said, could you outline what a persona would look like for our company and give it a name? Dude, this thing spit out, I've sent it to clients and they're like, holy shit, that just described me. You know, but the input to your earlier statement was a real conversation with somebody asking me to understand. So I would challenge a lot of our listeners, you know, if you're thinking about your persona, you're thinking about your branding, those type of things, have somebody on the other side, like grab a guy like Hersh and say, grill the shit out of me about my brand, grill me about my persona, record that damn thing and watch what turns up from that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and that's a great story, because I think that there is so much that this technology can provide. I do think it has to be regulated. I think there is a danger, because not because the machines are bad, but because people can be bad.
Machines are bad yet.
but people can say, oh, I want to co-opt that IP. I want to, why don't I just copy this? There's no protections for the originators of ideas and properties.
Right.
So
bringing it back to brand, because I know me, I can go down Chat GPT rabbit hole for a fucking hour. You know, where is the move for somebody when they're trying to do this integrated messaging? They're trying to, you know, put the brand out there. If they think they got somewhat of a little handle on their brand, where's their stories pop up? What should they do to really spread that brand messaging around?
It's different in every case. I mean, I have certain things that I feel work well. I think you can, it's, you know, for years, for as long as I can remember, there's been a conversation about earned media versus bought media, paid media, all that stuff. And it's like, the first thing I would say to somebody is, well, can you afford to buy exposure? And if they say, well, yeah, I have a budget I would say, okay, well, then let's buy some exposure, but let's make the content that we put out as organically sticky as possible, so that it has a life beyond the push you give it, you know. But let's definitely give it some kind of push, and let's put it out there. Advertising is not a dirty word. Advertising isn't a bad thing. What the problem is that happens is if someone would answer, well, no, I don't have any money for that, or I don't have that. I just have this incredible idea, or this incredible, you know, new product, or whatever it might be. Or they say, I don't want to. I want to see what happens if I don't. Then I would say, okay, well then let's earn some exposure for you. And the first thing I would ask is, do you have a following? And by following, I don't necessarily mean on social media, because, you know, a business doesn't need 1 million followers. I don't think anybody needs 1 million followers. And I don't think that 1 million followers amounts to $1 million in sales. I've yet to see that manifest, you know, itself in any way. So, but I would say, you know, who are your people? Oh, well, I have a list of people. I have a following from my newsletter. I have a following from my podcast, or I've developed a following from my YouTube channel. And it's like, okay, so these are the people you need to feed. Because if you feed the people that already get it, even if there's 100 people, you know, doesn't matter. If you have 100 people that are interested in what you're saying, feed that beast, because they are going to be compelled to tell other people about it. And in your world, they are your avatar, right? Because they actually are paying attention.
Right.
And who do they hang out with? Other people like them, probably, who share their problems, share their concerns, share their interests, and they're going to turn those people on to you. So I think that in the first case scenario, we look really very internally at the core of our popularity, and we feed that. You know, like if you would listen to my new podcast, that's already like, okay, wow, I have a listener, right? Well, now I'm gonna give you something that's worth your time because I know you're interested in it, and you're gonna tell other people about it. So
that's a huge point of going under. So when my wife and I were in Ireland, we found this one little shop, side of the freaking road, random shop there, and I ended up talking to the shopkeeper, and because he was there, we're talking to him, and he looked at me and he said, "Hey, if you ever think about throwing in the towel on your podcast, I want you to think about me and my dog walking across the Irish countryside. We're going to still be listening." And that for the longest time I was like, shit, I can't not do this no matter what happens because he's listening. Right.
Right.
So it's a great way that I hadn't heard or thought about in a while of hitting the people that are already into your message, already in your brand, and feeding them and giving them what they want. I really, really, really like that thought process.
I mean, I still think like that. When I started the Truth Tastes Funny podcast, which is the one I started first, and that's really much more human interest. So my guests were very varied, came from different disciplines and worlds and socioeconomic groups and all this stuff. And I knew that that I had a certain core listenership that I would hear from, that would leave reviews and so forth. And so when I started writing descriptions, show notes, and I'm writing the newsletter, and I'll say things like, it doesn't matter if you're a neurosurgeon from the Upper East Side of Manhattan, or you're a healer in Bali. Now that speaks to everybody, but I know that there's a listener who's a surgeon, on the Upper East Side, and there's a healer in Bali that listens to the show. And so rather than just the mail merge thing where it's, hi, Donnie, which I do too, we all use the mail merge thing. It's become, I think, when used right, it's like a term of endearment and respect. They know that it's not, you didn't handwrite the thing to them. Sometimes they don't, but but either way, I think it's kind of more of a gesture, and it does grab me when I see it. So I get a kick out of it when people do it cleverly. But I think when that person reads that thing, and they're probably going to read it, sometimes they'll write back, and then, and they'll say, "Oh, I saw the thing," that's. And the more you do that, the more personal this whole endeavor remains. Like, imagine now you're an 8-figure brand, but you throw that in to a letter from you. Oh, by the way, this goes out to all the East Side neurosurgeons. It's like, it's still funny, it's still clever, it still works for the general audience, but in your mind, you're still connecting with that dude on the ground in Ireland, and that's awesome. Important.
That's awesome. Well, Hersh, we could do this for the next freaking 20 years, probably, having this conversation. You're a fun dude to talk to, man. I really enjoy hanging out with you. I feel like we didn't give Kevin a whole lot of time to talk through this one, but sorry, I was geeking out on a lot of this. But
we can do a part 2.
Yeah, we may have to. We may have to.
Kevin Snow speaks out.
So, how do people find you? Where do they come look for you? And I'll tell you, give them your website address, because I specifically want them to go watch the video on your website of you introducing who you are.
So they can get that. Thank you, Donnie. They can get that. It'll go right to that page if they go to getmessagetherapy.com.
Nice.
Goes to that page. And they can contact me there. That's probably the best place to find me overall. There's a bunch of contact buttons and stuff. So
and we'll make sure Donnie spells that address correctly
Yes.
in the show notes, or everyone's going to go
Spell it
to
as
get massage therapy.
I could not afford to buy that URL just on the off chance of a need to redirect.
Yeah, I'm sure somebody's sitting on that for a pretty penny.
If they need it that bad, then let them go. They should go there. Go there first. Go there first. And then when your thinking is straight and you're a little more relaxed and your back doesn't hurt anymore, now you can get message therapy and figure out how you're going to tell your wife what you were doing on the other site.
That's awesome. Well, brother, thanks for doing this. Thanks for hanging out with us. Guys, go check out Hersh's stuff. It is really good, and I'm telling you, you're going to enjoy the hell out of that video. Thanks for doing this, bud.